And hello, everybody. I'm Walter. I'm the Dutch mentor, and welcome back to the S.M.A.R.T Performance Podcast. S for self-care, M for mindful growth, A for adaptive problem solving, R for rhythmic operation, T for a thriving community, and of course, P for performance. Today, I'm really happy to have Chip with me. We're going to be diving into what makes a great coach, because on the end of the day, as an emerging leader, you have to coach and mentor others, and you have to motivate and inspire them to bring the very best out of them. Of course, you have to bring the very best out of yourself. So we'll dive into this. So stick with us. It will be an action-packed 15 to 20 minutes with actionable takeaways. And always remember to go to the App Store, pick up the Dutch Mentor All One Word app. It actually went live just 10 minutes ago. So be the first one to buy into it. It is a phenomenal app that helps you be accountable just 15 minutes a day. Chip, thank you very much for joining me in conversation this morning. And tell me a little bit about yourself.
I've been a coach for 27 years and have had a front row seat at watching a lot of human development along the way. I've coached one-on-one. I've had some coaching clients for 20 years or better. I also run classes, do assessments and all that kind of stuff. So it's been an interesting ride for the last 27 years. And, it was interesting. You said coaching and mentoring. And I see those things as two completely different traits. And do you know where the word mentor came from?
I'm not sure. Probably a
So
Latin word from
mentor
somewhere.
mentor was an actual man who was told by Odysseus to tell his son everything he knew. His son was Telemachus, and he said, "Tell my son everything you know." And that became the limitation of mentoring. Mentoring is telling someone everything you know. Well, when you run out of things you know, what do you do? I mean, does the relationship end? No, that's where coaching comes in. So coaching assumes that you don't know everything, assumes that you're not trying to be the smartest person in the room. And you want to ask questions and you want to be curious enough about humans, about human development, to be able to ask those great questions and want to hear the answers. So there's a real big difference between coaching and mentoring, and that's why most mentoring programs have a difficult time getting off the ground, whereas coaching has really caught on. I mean, I started coaching 27 years ago when nobody knew what coaching was. It was maintained for C levels of large corporations, and that was about it. And then it just kind of hit the mainstream over the last 25 years. And wow, it's a cool way of discussing leadership.
Yeah. And the key thing is that coaching can be across any discipline, any industry, anything. Again, you have to be curious. You have to ask good questions. I call myself the Dutch mentor because I work, mostly with healthcare workers where my deep expertise is. And that's how people can relate to what, to each other. But it always goes from mentoring to coaching. And it is the combination of those two factors. I think that you carve out a bit of a niche in an area. And I also want to say is that what I have found difference is that coaching, which I certainly have had some really good coaches along the way, asking the good questions is a great way to get started and to really have you think outside the box and go on that journey together. It is the actionable items. And that's one thing I'll ask you to do today is that as we talk about, how can somebody be a great coach to their team? And of course, they should be coached along the way because that's something that I advocate is that, too many people still rely on online courses and webinars and conferences of a checkbox item of, I got this education. And at the end of the day, by Monday morning, they have long forgotten anything that was taught in those classes because they didn't make it actionable. And I think that's where a coach can come in or a mentor can come in and help, putting those pieces together and build that self-accountability or be that accountability, body at the end of the day to make sure that we're not just talking, asking good questions, but also putting it to work so you get these tangible outcomes. And I think that's behavior based. And I think that's the biggest missing component today in the world that I see and I experience in that part. But so tell me about your coaching. So how did you become a coach? And what is it that you initially visualized? And of course, how have you evolved as a coach? And I think it's important to understand that we all started off somewhere, just like the people who are listening to this. as we ask them to become good coaches and mentors to their teams, you need to evolve. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I got into it by blind dumb luck. I started off in the business wanting to be a platform speaker, wanting to be a motivational speaker. And I quickly learned that, it's kind of like being a stand-up comedian. You go up on stage for an hour, do your set, and you've got all this love that people are giving you. And then you walk off stage and you go back to your hotel room and there's nothing. And there's no relationships created. So yeah, I got introduced by coaching to coaching by my first coach, and he was just a friend that I met through a network, and he started coaching me, and he said, listen, I need the practice. Can I work it out with you? And so he introduced me to it, and what I found great about it was the way that it creates relationships and also the way it creates cash flow because it's a different model when you're talking about somebody that's coaching for profit versus somebody that's coaching in a corporate setting. But, to me, what I've learned over the years is that you can't lead others until you lead yourself. And so, I talk about going from a way of doing to a way of being. And so a way of doing is all the stuff that we're lauded for, all the stuff that we've been lauded for all our lives, for doing stuff, for being a great engineer or going to school and getting A's, and so those are the things that we're praised for over the years. And then all of a sudden somebody says, "Well, you're a great engineer. Maybe you should be a good leader." Well, that doesn't track, does it? I mean, but that's the way we promote. We promote super workers into supervisors. And so a way of being is more of a coaching mentality, a coaching style of leadership. And you're right, it's asking great questions. I love your analogy of moving from mentoring to coaching because there is all a part of that. We all have a lot of experience in whatever our chosen field. I've worked with third-party logistics companies for a lot of my career, so I have a more of an in-depth knowledge of that particular business, trucking, warehousing, and that kind of thing. Um, but you run out of things to talk about there, and that's where coaching fills in the blanks. So I talk about I've got a book out, and in the book I talk about the five C's, and the five C's are context, clarity, conditioning, choice, and character. Context is knowing who you are, where you are, what point you're starting from. Clarity is knowing what you want, and most people have no clue what they want.
Yeah.
Most people don't ever really want to choose. Um, Conditioning is getting your mind ready to accept it. I lost 110 pounds after I had a stroke 14 years ago, and I had to change my mind to think of myself as a thin person, and that's a huge shift. Choice. I have a sheet called a waypoint sheet that is a way of planning out a goal or that kind of thing. And then character is putting it all together. Character is being the best coach you can be. Character is having personal accountability, and by putting those things together, they help with the self leadership, which then makes you authentic. And everybody talks about being authentic in coaching or in being authentic in leadership. I think authenticity is the one thing that everybody looks for. You get tired of all the people that are just false and just phoning it in. And so, this is a way of becoming authentic. You work on yourself first.
Yeah, I love it. I always talk about this as a Dutch man, to being Dutch, I'm very pragmatic, right? There's no fluff. We are empathetic, but to the point. And it is something, I use the equation of high performance equals the function of a technical ability multiplied against the behavioral capacity. Well, you talk about going from a super worker to a supervisor. that shift is tremendous, right? They know the technical abilities, but they have not yet, developed that behavior. And I also see that I'm an adjunct professor at Rutgers University, and I teach classes there, and I see the differences that people is that what we teach in theory is not what is actually taking place. And the students love it when I tell people theory, but then I connect it to what actually the real world looks like and what needs to be done. And there's such a massive gap there in order to be able to, and that's where the best leaders learn very early on to be hyper self-aware, and then develop those deep understandings of self and things that need to be done so they can become. Make it actionable for me. So what is in person that's listening to the show today, where can they start by recognizing, listen, I'm struggling. I call it the valley of despair, that right in between that super worker, the supervisor or manager. What can they do? What should they start doing? Of course, buy your book and read your book. What actions can they take on a day-to-day basis to get through that valley of despair and then become that coach and mentor to their team?
The first thing is, if you've been promoted, the first thing is to realize that leadership is a profession. Because most people don't think of leadership as a profession. But when you have become a manager or are promoted the first time, and especially when you get promoted the second time to where you're managing managers or you're managing supervisors, leadership is your profession. It's not engineering, it's not sales, it's not, and I was a great salesman, but then I got promoted to being what in the day it was called a terminal manager. Sounds like a disease, doesn't it?
Yeah,
But I was promoted to a terminal manager, so I had operations and sales, and you know, the old school model was you were expected to know everything. That isn't the way real life works. And if the amount of human knowledge is doubling every 2 years, then we can't know everything. And so the first step is to admit that leadership is a profession and that you are a leader. The second step is to say, okay, brutally honest, where am I? Where am I in that journey? What does it feel like? What is my context? Am I good to my family? Am I good to the people around me? How do I want to be seen? And does that match with the reality? And that's really the first step. That's how to make it actionable. But the first thing is admit admit that leadership is your new profession.
Listen, I've never heard anybody put it that way. I think that it's so on hitting the nail on the head. It is that people don't realize that. So there's a scary statistic that came out of a McKinsey study in 2021 that 95% of executive leaders know and understand the value of leadership development, right? Really making leadership a profession and giving people the tools, the skills, knowledge, and abilities and the support they need in order to become those highly effective leaders. The problem is that only 5% of those leaders actually took meaningful action. And what I see in the companies today is that they set up an executive leadership development in a company of 10, 15, 20,000. 30 people get to go to, but the other 6,000 people who are leaders, especially the leaders at the front line, get to take an online course. And they're missing the boat, right? And that's why I think that you hit the nail on the head is that, leadership is a profession. In the world of healthcare, we have the American College of Healthcare Executives, and I teach the fellowship program, for them. That is a part of acknowledging that leadership is a profession. Even that is too much more based on theory, not necessarily always actionable. It's an attestation of your knowledge, so to speak. But I love what you just said. So take that into account, right? Now you have that first step and that clarity around purpose. So once they have that in place, how could they position themselves to their teams to be a coach, to be a mentor, to be somebody that they can relate to rather than, I'm comparing myself to somebody else?
That is a great question. Um, well, the second step is to admit you don't know everything. And
And that's right.
yeah, and so, two things, humility and curiosity. So Look, the first time I was promoted, and I was 25 years old the first time I was promoted. I had no business being in that position. I really had no business. But they thought I was a good salesman, so I must have been a good manager. I had horrible imposter syndrome, and so I felt I had to be a certain way. So that led to a lot of judgmentalism. That led to a lot of defensive behaviors on myself and the people around me because I put that defensiveness off, and that just that led to some very bad things. Um, so if I had been humble, if I had said, look, I don't know what's going on. I'm not the expert on this. So what do you think? So humility and curiosity and just knowing. And people are going to respect you for that. They're going to respect you a lot more than you making up answers that I remember I we were in Florida, and there's a town called Zephyr Hills. And in fact, there's a bottled water, the Zephyr Hills water that comes from that. And I was convinced there was a town called Zephyrillus. And I got into a debate with my sales reps who had been in Florida a lot longer than I had, uh, about whether it was Zephyr Hills or Zephyrillus, and I just wouldn't back down. And what a stupid thing. I mean, just stupid to fight about. And what that did was erode any sense of you know any sense
Trust.
of superiority, any sense of knowing what I was talking about. And wow, just those interactions over time just destroy you. So I actually did a pretty good job according to the company, and I got promoted again. But sooner or later, it catches up with you.
Yeah. Yeah, you have it. There isn't a proverbial glass ceiling, right? There's a name for that. Skip my mind right now, but yeah, you have to be mindful about it. That yeah, you can fake it, but only for so long. Right? At some point in time, you're running into a brick wall, and people become more aware. Listen, I love our conversation about this topic because I think it's really, really relevant to those people who are seeking to go into leadership. That there is a big difference between leading people and managing process. And
Yes.
when you shift from being that super worker to the supervisor manager, and even if you got to that next level to director level, you each one of you should make it a point to go out. And that's exactly why you wrote books to share your message. Exactly why I just developed that smart performance app that we released today to help people to gain the skills, knowledge, and ability to understanding that leadership, as you put it, and I might actually use that if you don't mind, that leadership is a profession and we need to treat it as such and take responsibility. And the silly thing is that I run into, and especially in healthcare more so than other industries, the reluctance of employers, the willingness to pay for them, for coaches and mentors, which is complete foolishness if you think about how much quicker they could perform at the next level up if they would only invest in that. Number two, people cutting that out of their budgets as soon as it gets hot in the kitchen. In other words, there's shortfalls in other areas. Again, foolish on their part. And then it is the individual not understanding that if they make that investment in self, even if it is, the app is only $50 a month or a coaching assignment for $3,000 to $5,000. If you get that promotion, if you get that raise in the next 12 to 18 months of 5, 10, 15, 20, $20,000 over a lifetime of 25 years, that's $1 million. And people need to
Yeah.
understand that it is foolish. You spend $120,000 on an MBA and then don't follow through on finding yourself a really good coach to help you get through that difficult period of time of going from doing to leading. But Chip, listen, you and I can probably talk about this for hours more. Tell us where we can find you, where we can buy your book, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, my website is scholzassociates.com, SCHOLZ and associates, all spelled out. my book is called Small Decisions, Big Shifts, and it's been out since October. You can find it on Amazon, and also the audiobook is on Barnes and Noble and Spotify and a few other platforms. And then I've got another one coming out in March called Every Dog Has Its Day, and I'm working on another one for next year, which is called Handoffs. So and I would love to have a conversation with you and just see if things are going well. The other thing is, and this is a shameless plug. Um, at my website, if you go to books and under books, go to What's Chip Reading, there are about 140 book suggestions there that all have a review. And this review that was written by me, so take it with a grain of salt. I mean, they're all books that I've read, but there's some really good developmental books in there. Everything from the Four Agreements to Coaching for Performance to some books by Malcolm Gladwell. And so just really, if you want to work on yourself without hiring a coach, I would say hire a coach, but also take the time to read. Here's a scary stat: 57% of all college grads never crack another book in their entire lives.
I know. It is, I have written many books myself, both professional and technical. And people say, why do you write books? Well, listen, I know there's at least one person that can benefit from it. Right? It is that the other, somebody told me, well, how many books are you going to sell? It's, well, 200. Why 200? Because I don't have any more family or friends to buy them. Listen, it is a shame, right? I established early on with my kids that we read a book per week. And today I'm heavy into aviation because I'm finishing up my CFII helicopter, which I have, and now doing the same thing for airplane. But I cannot wait to complete that in the next couple of 3 months, so I can go back to my stack of books that are waiting for me to read. And I still like that physical feeling of having a book in hand.
I know.
So with that said, in closing thoughts.
Well, just invest in yourself, because if you want to be a leader, you've got to lead yourself and invest in yourself. I think it's crazy that people don't spend money on themselves. They spend money on all kinds of crazy stuff, going and having a Starbucks every day, but putting that money towards a coach or putting that money towards a class or getting your MBA or whatever that is, invest in yourself.
Rock solid advice, and I think it's the biggest omission that folks are making by not being more diligent in investing early in their careers. The dividends of that early investment is clearly shown to be phenomenal. Will set you up for success later on in life. Chip, thank you very much for joining me today in conversation. I really, really appreciate the insights, and I love some of the lines that you used, and I hope that the audience will take that to heart and take action and go visit Chip's website and do some work. All of this will be in the show notes to the audience. And again, thank you for listening today. I look forward to our next session with another topic. And of course, you can find me at thedutchmentor.com for any follow-up questions. And I would encourage you to go to the App Store, The Dutch Mentor, all one word, and download the app. It's a 7-day free trial to really dig into it. And if you see the benefit, which I have no doubt, as many of the founding members have found, you too, in 15 minutes a day, can be the leader you always wanted to be, or the leader that your team needs to thrive under. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.